Hello friends, there's a car that could out-corner an Alfa Romeo, outbrake almost everything in its class, and hit triple digits in third gear alone, and yet most car enthusiasts today have never even heard its name. It wasn't a supercar, it wasn't even trying to be sporty, it was a family sedan, and that's exactly why nobody saw it coming. This is the story of the Fiat 125S, the car that hit a genuine sports engine inside 4 doors and a trunk big enough for groceries. To understand why the 125S mattered, you have to go back to the mid-1960s, when Fiat had a problem. Their mid-size lineup, the 1500 and the 1800, was getting old fast, and the car meant to replace them, an ambitious new project, was still years away from being ready.
Fiat needed something in the gap, and they needed it quickly, so their engineers did something clever. Instead of starting from scratch, they took the floor pan and chassis from the outgoing 1300 and 1500, stretched the body of the newer Fiat 124, and dropped in a completely different engine. The result, revealed at the Geneva Motor Show in 1967, was the Fiat 125. On paper, it sounds like a corporate parts bin special. In practice, it was anything but. The engine Fiat chose to put under the hood wasn't some tired old family car unit. It was a 1.6-liter double overhead camshaft 4-cylinder, borrowed directly from the Fiat 124 Sport. A twin-cam engine in a mainstream sedan? In 1967? That was almost unheard of.
Most manufacturers were putting single-cam engines in their family cars and saving twin cams for their sports models. Fiat just quietly gave regular customers a race-bred heart wrapped in sensible sheet metal, and most of them probably had no idea how special what they were driving actually was. The base 125 already made around 90 horsepower, which doesn't sound huge today, but for a mid-size family sedan in the late 60s, that was genuinely quick. It could pull past 100 miles an hour, and thanks to how the gearing was set up, the car could hit 125 kilometers an hour in third gear alone, without even needing top gear. That's actually where the car's name is believed to come from, not the engine size, the top speed in third gear. Then, in 1968, Fiat decided the standard car wasn't quite enough and gave the world the version we're really here to talk about, the 125 Special, badged as the 125S. Fiat's engineers went back into that twin-cam engine and reworked the cylinder head, upgraded the camshaft, and fitted a proper dual-throat carburetor. The result was 100 horsepower out of a 1.6-liter engine, at a time when most manufacturers considered that kind of output nearly impossible without turbocharging or a much bigger displacement. And Fiat paired it with something even rarer for the era, a 5-speed manual gearbox, standard on a family sedan, when most cars, including some genuine sports cars, were still making do with 4 gears.
That's the part that made the 125S feel like a sleeper before the word sleeper was even common car slang. It looked like an ordinary square-shouldered Italian sedan, the kind your accountant might drive, and underneath, it was outrunning cars that were supposedly built for performance. But Fiat didn't stop at the engine and gearbox. The 125S came with 4-wheel disc brakes and a vacuum servo at a time when plenty of rivals were still using drum brakes on at least the rear wheels. The transmission used Porsche-style synchromesh, which made shifting smoother and more durable under hard use. It had halogen headlights before they became common.
And it was one of the very first production cars in the world to feature intermittent windshield wipers, a feature so ordinary today that it's easy to forget someone had to invent it first, and Fiat was there early. There's one particularly clever, if slightly flawed, engineering touch worth mentioning, the electromagnetic cooling fan clutch. Instead of the fan spinning constantly off the engine, wasting power and fuel, this clutch let the fan engage only when the engine actually needed the extra cooling. It was a smart, efficiency-minded idea decades before it became standard practice. The catch was reliability. These clutches had a reputation for failing, and a lot of surviving cars eventually had them swapped for conventional fixed fans.
It's the kind of detail that tells you a lot about this car. Genuinely ahead of its time, but not without growing pains. Fiat also offered options that pushed the 1250S even further into enthusiast territory, including lightweight magnesium wheels for those who wanted to shed a little extra weight and sharpen the handling. Combine that with a chassis that journalists at the time praised for its balance and communication, and you had a car that could genuinely hang with dedicated sports sedans of the era. Cars like the Alfa Romeo Giulia Super, despite costing less and looking far more conservative. And the 1250S didn't just impress on the street. Tuning houses and independent teams, including cars prepared with input from a Barth, took the 125 into rally competition, where it picked up class victories at events like the Monte Carlo Rally, the Acropolis Rally, and the Olympic Rally through the early to mid-1970s. It wasn't fighting for outright wins against purpose-built rally machines, but within its class, against cars from bigger, more famous performance brands, it kept winning. That's a serious resume for a car most people assumed was just transportation. Here's where the story gets even more interesting, because the Fiat 125's legacy didn't end when Italian production wound down in 1972. Fiat licensed the design to Poland, where the state-owned FSO factory built their own version, the Polski Fiat 125P, starting in 1967 and continuing all the way until 1991. The Polish version was simplified. It kept the sturdy 1300 and 1500 mechanicals rather than the twin-cam engine, and it swapped the square headlights for round ones. But in doing so, it became something the original never was in Italy, a genuine icon. Behind the Iron Curtain, the 125P became one of the most common and beloved cars on the road, produced in the millions, later evolving into the Polonis. A car born as an interim solution in Turin ended up shaping automotive culture across an entire region of Europe for over 2 decades. The 125 also found homes far beyond Poland.
It was built in Argentina by Fiat Concorde, in Egypt by Nasco, and in smaller numbers across Colombia and Chile, each region adapting it slightly for local roads, local factories, and local demand. Very few cars from this era can claim that kind of global footprint while remaining almost invisible in car culture conversations today. So why has the Fiat 125S been forgotten? Probably because it never tried to announce itself. It didn't have flared fenders or a badge screaming performance. It looked like exactly what it was on the surface, a practical 4-door sedan. And that modesty is precisely what let it slip out of memory, while flashier rivals kept their spots in the history books. But underneath that quiet exterior was a twin-cam engine borrowed from a sports car, a 5-speed gearbox before that was common, 4-wheel disc brakes, genuine rally pedigree, and an engineering team willing to try small, forward-thinking ideas even when they weren't perfect. The Fiat 125S wasn't loud about what it was. It didn't need to be. It just quietly did more than anyone expected, wore a business suit while doing it, and then disappeared from the conversation almost as fast as it disappeared down the road. That's not a forgotten footnote. That's the definition of a sleeper, and it might just be time this one finally got its credit.
And here's the real twist. Today, a clean Fiat 125S will cost you a fraction of what an Alfa Giulia Super or a BMW 1600 from the same era commands, despite matching them feature for feature, and in some cases beating them outright. Parts are scarce, sure, and finding one outside Europe takes patience. But for anyone chasing a piece of automotive history that the market hasn't caught up to yet, the 125S might be one of the last true bargains from the golden age of the sports sedan. Sometimes the best-kept secrets are hiding in plain sight, wearing a suit, waiting for someone to finally take a second look.